I'll warn you, based on my experience at the 8 o'clock church, you will need your bulletin open to the gospel reading for today, just because I want to ask you a few questions. Things have changed, Johnson family, or since you've been here last. We're now having active sermons, so get ready. I have some questions for you. Today is really all about what's it like to know God? What's God like? Now, do people talk to you about God, what God is like? Do you have many of those conversations in your life? I do, all the time. People want to tell me what God is like. And I don't listen to most people about that because I just don't, okay, I usually say, because they're usually talking about a God that I don't recognize, God that wants this person killed or this person out or whatever. But when Jesus talks about God, I listen. Yeah? When Jesus talks about God, I pay attention. So, today, Jesus is telling us a story. And it starts out like it sounds like he's talking about God. And so it got my attention right away. It begins this way. Jesus told his disciples a parable. Right. So which is a story, isn't it? It's not like doctrine or law or you must believe this way. It is a story. So remember that. Okay? Good job. Much better than the 8 o'clock. I'm telling you, way better. So he says, it's a story. And Jesus told the disciples a parable about their what? Need to pray always and not lose heart. Jesus tells them a story about their need to pray always and not lose heart. That's what the story is about. Now, we want to change this story. We don't want it to be about that. Right? Because it goes on and he says, in a certain city, there was a judge. And so immediately our mind goes to, oh, that's God. God's the judge. And we're the women in the story, right? We're half right. We're the woman in the story. But the judge isn't exactly God in the story, and I'll tell you why. Really, what it's about here is our need to be persistent with God. Hang in there with God. And the first thing about this first part is God is not the judge, but rather, and this is subtle, so stay with me, it is about our need to not lose heart. It is not that God must be nagged, right? Like a spouse, or a priest, or a priest. It's not like that. And the key to this is it says there was a judge, in a certain city there was a judge who neither feared God nor had respect for people. Does that sound like God? No. It's a story about a judge and a woman who goes to this judge. And so the woman in a certain city, in that city it says, there was a widow who kept coming to the judge saying, grant me justice against my opponent. Now, what does the woman want? Justice. When does she want it? Now. Sounds like a cheer, doesn't it? What does the woman want? Justice. When does she want it? Now. What does she want? Justice. When does she want it? Now. Yes, it's so good. You've got it. It's a cheer. But apparently, it is not happening. At least this cry for justice is not happening, not being responded to quickly enough. Because she has to keep going back. And that is our dilemma, is it not? Isn't this our dilemma when we ask God to help us or to bring justice? Do you think the world is a mess right now? When is it going to get better? What do you want? Justice. When do you want it? Now. What is God waiting for? You know? What is God waiting for? It's our dilemma, right? This parable, this story is about dealing with the reality in which we find ourselves, that God is present, that God is real, that God is with us, that we pray, that we beg, we even demand, and we wait. And we wait. And we wait. And we wait. And we go to the story and we say, oh, I get it. We have to bug God enough till we get God's attention to respond. And Jesus is not saying that. He's not saying, hey, listen, it's like this. You gotta nag old Pops for a while. You don't know him the way I know him. Nag him for a while. He'll give you what you want. It's not like that. What he is saying is, don't lose heart. He tells the whole story to tell us this. Don't lose heart, brothers and sisters. Anybody remember that story that he tells about when a parent would, if a child asks a parent to give me an egg, would a parent give him a scorpion? You remember that? If a child wants a piece of bread, the parent won't give him a snake. Remember that? Well, that's what he's saying. He's saying it's like this judge. Eventually the judge gives in. Even if an unjust judge will eventually give in, how much more will God give? In God's time, I guess. So he's saying, don't lose heart. God is faithful. And don't lose faith because God is kind and good and just and sometimes just really annoyingly absent. Last week, I think it was Thursday night. I can't remember exactly. I think it was Thursday night. In the middle of the night, I was awake. This ever happened to you in the middle of the night? Wake up, toss and turn, toss and turn. And I'm going to tell you, I was feeling very alone. Alone in the universe, really. I was feeling like, where is God? Like I was pretty upset about what's going on in the world. You know, sometimes when you're a priest, you wonder if your ministry is doing any good. You wonder if, as a citizen, if you're doing any good in the world. And I was just feeling very alone and frustrated because things aren't happening, I guess, on my time scale. And I was just sort of wondering, where are you? And it occurred to me, this is the Christian life, right? Or a good deal of it. The mystics had a word for it. They called it the dark night of the soul. Does that sound familiar? The dark night of the soul. Have you ever had such an experience? I don't mean to trivialize it. It's really meant for a much bigger experience. But it was kind of like that for me. I was in the night. It was dark. And I was having a tough time figuring out where God was in all of this. And I think that's the way it is. And I imagine that you can't have a true and active faith without that. It isn't to be avoided, I don't think, in the Christian life. I think it is to be expected. It kind of means that you're getting it, I think. Has there ever been a Bible hero who didn't have this sense of either abandonment by God or conflict with God? Can you think of one? Abraham, right? Moses, yeah? David, Job, Jacob. I mean, today's story, Old Testament story, we got Jacob. He sent his family across the river. He's going to meet up with his mean brother who he's afraid of, Esau, and he's on this side of the river all by himself, asleep late at night. He's awake. And what happens? It says it's a man. Part of it says it's an angel. We do believe here maybe it's God. God comes to wrestle with Jacob. And Jacob is up all night wrestling with God. And he says, I'm not quitting. I'm not quitting. Even though you're powerful. Even though you put my hip out. I'm not quitting. Give me my blessing. And what did he get at the end? He got his blessing. He stayed in there with God. Even Jesus, you guys. Even Jesus. When? The Garden of Gethsemane. Remember? What's going to happen? He's going to the cross, going to be killed. He knows this. What does he do? He prays in the garden and he cries out to God, look, if this could not happen, I'm in, right? Take it away. And he cries tears, doesn't he? Even Jesus. I think not getting it is getting it in a way. Don't give up, because God is not dead or sick or wounded or angry or distracted or stubborn. What God is mysterious. Hang in there with God. Contend with God. All the great ones of the faith did it. And they were not abandoned by God, and neither will we be abandoned by God. Wrestle with God. Contend with God. Demand your justice from God. So here's what I want to ask you. Will you join me in a small but important commitment and exercise? Call it a test if you want. Would you commit to praying for justice 10 minutes a day for a month? How many more of you would commit if I just said a week? That's all I could get out of the early service. What if our whole community prayed 10 minutes every day for justice? Would you do that? Would you?
Yes.
Commit with me. I'm going to do it. 10 minutes a day.
10 minutes a day.
Pray for justice. Now, pray any way you want, for anything you want, but make it justice in the world, not a Jaguar in your driveway. Okay? Pray for the right thing. You don't have to pray for anything other than that. Lord, bring justice. And then you can think about the different ways in which the world is unjust. And you could say, come to bear on these things, Lord. I beg you. I pray that you will. I'm wrestling with you for justice. Because I believe something will happen. Let's see what happens. Just 10 minutes. Now, if you had a friend in your life, and you asked them for something that was good, right, and was important to you, and if you asked them once, would they do it? If you asked them every day for a week, would they do it if they're your friend? If not, you should rethink your friendships. How much more will God respond to us? I don't know, but I am very curious to find out. I'll see you next week.